Hi class, welcome back to my channel. Now again, my name is, I'm your professor, Mary Anna Celine Angowan, here in Developmental Psychology. So right now, I'm going to put up a recording of our session today, which is Infancy. This is due to because a lot of events are happening now in our school, so I really need to put this in a recording so you can go by and also was able to have the lecture while we're having different activities in our school. So right now, we are going to talk about infancy. So I've already discussed you before or during our classes that there are a lot of stages in the human development, and also those stages actually alongside is together with the other psychological stages. So we have the psychosexual stages of Freud, social of Erik Erikson. We also have the moral, which is for Kohlberg, and also we have the cognitive as well, which is Piaget. And also we have different kinds of theories associated with the human development, like the attachment theories and many more. So right now I'm going to focus on infancy. So this is actually the after birth. This is the first stage of a human development or a child goes through. So I've already mentioned this in our class before, that if a child was born, one of the most important aspects that a doctor should look at, and anyone who's actually in developmental psychology should check, is the readiness of the child. So what kind of readiness in here? The readiness of the child to live up to the world. So we have two important reflexes that we should look at to check if the behavior of the child is normal, and of course, unfortunately, if it is abnormal. So the first one is the survival reflexes. So these are the reflexes that is important for the child to actually survive in the real world. Okay, so remember when we are still in the womb, so we have certain reflexes. And also outside the womb, these reflexes are very important because this will help a child survive. So in here, survival reflexes help newborns adapt to their surroundings and satisfy basic needs. So in here, for them to actually survive and do the basic needs that they need to actually survive. So the common term in here, these are reflexes for a child to actually survive. We also have the primitive reflexes. So I've already mentioned this in our class. The primitive reflexes actually are the ones who are not that useful, but it's necessary to observe, and it's necessary to see in a child to know that they are actually developing accordingly. So in here, primitive reflexes are not as useful. Their disappearance in the first year is a sign that development is proceeding normally. So that's what I said a while ago as well. So again, we have two important reflexes to know if a child is ready for life, and that is the survival reflexes and also the primitive reflexes. So newborns actually have a very different kind of sleep cycle that is very different to an adult, and also to a child, also a grown-up child. So in here, the newborn's sleep-waking cycle becomes better organized over the first year of life, meaning there are actually moments when the child needs to sleeps for more than 12 hours in the morning and awake during the night. So in simple terms, the sleeping patterns of an individual or of a child is actually screwed during the going to the first year of life of a child. So in here, babies move into and out of 6 infant states in the typical day, and spend up to 70% of their time sleeping. So what can you expect of a child? Of course, the child will focus more on their development, so they will be sleeping most of the time. It's actually 70% of the time they are actually sleeping. So we have the term REM sleep. So the rapid eye movement, or the REM sleep, is very important. In here, we could know if a child is actually on REM sleep if they have twitches, jerks, and also the eye has this evident rapid movement. We have the phenomenon of the sudden infant death syndrome, which is the leading cause of infant mortality. So this is the phenomenon where 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 the mother will just instantly find their child in their cribs, with no pulse and not breathing. So this is called the sudden infant death syndrome. So it's I don't know if, it is a known and a very important, very yes, it's a phenomenon that is very famous. Right now, there's no evident cause of what causes the sudden infant death syndrome. So I've also mentioned this in our class before, that a child actually has a reflexes. So again, we have the survival reflexes and also the primitive reflexes. The survival reflexes, again, these are reflexes that are necessary for a child to actually survive in the real world. So we have the following. So the first one is the breathing reflexes. So from the term itself, breathing is it's the inhalation and the exhalation of a child. So with this reflex, of course, the child can actually breathe, and the oxygen and carbon dioxide in their system can actually exchange. We also have the eye blink reflex. So in here, this is the closing and the opening of the eye of the child. So by blinking as well. So this one actually helps the child protect the eyes of the child. So from bright light and many more. We also have the pupillary reflex. Pupillary reflex. In here, this is the constriction and dilation, constriction and dilation of the pupils of the child. So in here, it also protects the child from bright lights, and also it helps the eyes adapt to the new world, to the new environment as well. So the first three, we have the breathing, the eye, and also the pupillary, are all permanent. Now we also have the rooting reflex, which later on disappears as the child grows. So the rooting reflex, in here, it is the turning of the head in the direction of a tactile stimulus to the cheek. So in here, if you're going to put an object, or an object near the cheek of the child, so the child should recognize where that tactile or that stimulus came from. So if the stimulus touches the cheek of the right cheek of the child, so the child should able to move to the direction where that tactile object came from. So that's what actually rooting reflex is all about. We also have the sucking reflex. So in here, the child has the ability to actually do a sucking behavior, where he or she might put his or her thumb inside her mouth. So that's the sucking reflex. So this is also permanent. The rooting in this table is the one that is not permanent. And we also have the swallowing reflex. So from the term itself, it should show that the child was able to swallow food and milk, and to actually take in nutrients. So these are actually the important survival reflex that a child should have. Like what I've mentioned a while ago, we have the primitive reflexes. So these are reflexes that are necessary, however, should disappear later on life. So we have the Babinski reflex, which is the fanning and the curling of the toes when the bottom of the foot is stroked. So we have a special instrument in pediatrics wherein there's a Babinski hammer. So they will just what they call this, tap on the knees, and then the legs of, or the knees of the legs of the child will suddenly twitch or move. So that's the Babinski reflex. So in here, the importance is the presence at birth, the disappearance of it, and the first year is indication of a normal neurological development. So again, all of the primitive reflexes, it should actually be it should disappear later on in life, because not able to disappear later on in life will actually include neurological abnormality. Alright, so the next one, we have the palmar grasping reflex. So in here, we have the palms, we have our palms. So in here, it is the ability of the child to actually curl their fingers around an object if an object was placed on their hands or on their palms. So that's the palmar grasping reflex. We also have the Moro reflex. In here, it is also known as the startle reflex, wherein you startle the child and the child will recognize that startle and they will actually cry with it. Okay, so it's the startle reflex or the moral reflex. We also have the swimming reflex. In here, the ability of the child to actually know how to swim whenever they are put in a swimming pool or any in a state where they are going or they are required to actually know how to swim. So again, these are reflexes that are necessary but should disappear later on in life. So that is a swimming. That's one of it, the swimming reflex. And then we also have the stepping reflex, where in here, when you held the infant up high or upright rather, they would actually have this reflex on actually try to step on and try to attempt to walk on to walk on a surface. So that's actually the primitive reflex. Alright, so one of the characteristics of a child to actually have a normal, that is actually normal, is the crying. So crying is the state by which infants communicate distress. So meaning there's something's wrong with the infant and there is something that you need to address. So this is very important because infants actually, this is their only way to actually communicate. So crying in medicine terms and also in psychology, in here we have the crying actually entails that first there's brain damage, and second there's actually needs something to be done. Okay, so first let's go to brain damage. So brain damage, if an infant keeps on crying, it indicates that there's a brain damage, and especially if that crying is actually includes baby shrills, and also that is a non-rhythmic cry. So it means that there is brain damage there, and the behavior is being set outside of the infant is a irritated and distressed infant. So that's the way the crying goes. So crying typically diminishes over the first 6 months as the brain matures and caregivers become better at preventing the infant's distress. So typically it goes away. So let's all remember that actually the brain still grows while the baby or the infant is also growing. So like what I've mentioned in our class before, that our skull is actually, it still has a bit of it's not yet closed. Okay, it's not that compact yet. It should have a room for growth. So that's why if there is a brain damage that is going on with that infant, a very irritated, distressed crying is very evident. But basically this brain the spaces in the skull, in the skull, will actually yes, it will typically closes, but that's it. So the crying also decreases over time. So there are actually states of arousal of an infant. So we have first the regular sleep. So this is where the child is actually still, the eyes are closed, it's not moving, but the breathing is regular. So typically it lasts for 8 to 9 hours. We have the irregular sleep, where in here the baby's eyes are closed but can be observed to move under the closed eyelids. So that's what we call the rapid eye movement. And also there are observations of the jerk, grimaces of a child in here. So that's irregular sleep. So we also have drowsiness, wherein there are a sleepy in a mode of falling asleep. So this is where the infant actually goes on and off on sleeping. They would sleep and then they'll wake up, sleep and then wake up. So in here, eyes can be open and closed, have a glazed appearance with open. Breathing is regular but more rapid than in regular sleep. So typically this lasts a half to 3 hours. All right, and then what else? We have the alert inactivity. In here, the child is actually alert but are just observing. So in here, the breathing is even and the body is relatively inactive. So they're awake, but they're not that active as it seems to be. And then we also have the alert activity. So in here, the baby is actually alert. He or she is actually fully awake and actually doing stuff. So they have infancy and display various bursts of diffuse motor activity and many more. So, yeah, so in here, because they're alert and they're very active, they would be, the breathing is actually not normal. So this lasts for 1 to 3 hours. And then lastly, we have the crying. So in here, the intense crying that may be difficult to stop and is accompanied by high levels of motor activity. So in here, this is the very furious crying and many more. Again, crying actually indicates either a brain damage or something that is need to be addressed by the caregiver as soon as possible. So now let's talk on the first 2 years of life. So actually, I've divided this presentation to a couple of parts. So I'll try to finish the rest in less than 30 minutes. But however, so let's start first the first 2 years of life. So in the first 2 years of life, the things that we need to talk about or to focus on is the biological endowment. So that means that everything that includes on the sensory, motor, and neurological capacity, it's either intact or impaired, everything about the first 2 years of life. So in here, let's remember that in the first 2 years of life, the baby is growing fast. So in here, there's a rapid growth and development of a child. So the physical growth, maturation, the clothes that you're buying, so it might, and I mean it might be not evident in the first. It is very evident that the clothes are changing a lot of times, and also so in here, also in the sensory inputs, the development of skills are affected by transactions as well. So now let's talk about the transactional model of development. So in here, what's important in this transactional model of development is that the relationship between the child and his or her caregiver. So what are the caregivers? So caregivers are typically the guardian, the parent, the mom or the dad or the cousin or anyone who is actually taking care of the child. So in here, the transactional model of development entails that caregiving and social factors as well as genetic influences shape the brain's architecture associated with changes in development and behavior. In simple terms, everything about the environment, everything about the caregiver actually help the development of the brain and actually helps the behavior of the child in the long run as well. So that's why we have different theories about starting from infancy, like Freud. So he actually conceptualized the idea or the theory of oral fixation or oral personality because of this part. Because in here, the caregiver and the environment of the child in the first 2 years of life is very important. So in here, the establishment of good relationships starts with mainly involving the child and also the interaction with his or her caregiver. We have the socio-emotional development. So everything in here, we're going to talk about the social factors in the child and of the child rather, and how it influences emotion. So socio-emotional patterns are formulated based on how infants forge relationships and interact with their environment. So in here, what are the patterns that are seen outside of the infant and how these factors actually affect the infant. So that's what this is all about. So we have infants' response to the caregiver shapes the parents' behavior as well. So it goes not just on the infant, but it also goes to the caregivers as well. So how the infant reacts or behaves actually affects the parents, and so are the parents affects the behavior of the infant. Now let's go further on the different topics that needs to be talked about in infancy. So first, we have the very famous attachment or separation on the theories of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. So in here, one of the most important aspects of Erik Erikson is the sense of trust. So during infancy, the sense of trust is developed. Because in here we have the issue of trust versus mistrust. So what are the features in this stage? So needs to acquire a sense of security and trust, and attractiveness and dependency help him to acquire stability by provoking a sense of tenderness in those who care for him. So let's go on a brief background again of Erik Erikson. So Erik Erikson is the very famous psychologist who developed the psychosocial development. So he believes that in every developmental stage of a child actually addresses a psychological issue. So in infancy, the first issue would be the development of trust. So he believes that if a child wasn't able to get the care that he or she needs, the child might develop the trust or mistrust to their guardian, and which later on, if not resolved it will develop later on a pathological or a mental health issue in the future. So the next one is the importance of attachment. So attachment involves close proximity, and it provides a secure base for a child, which allows infants to explore their world, autonomy, and mastery. So if trust is not established, it would be hard for a child to explore. That may lead to developmental abnormalities. So in here, attachment, Erikson indicates the importance of attachment. Attachment is the one that actually binds. It actually is the concept behind the relationship of the child to his or her caregiver. Again, caregiver, that may be a mother, a father, or a guardian that is who directly takes care of the child. So this attachment is the close proximity that gives the child the sense of trust versus mistrust. So if it is not established, the trust is not established, developmental abnormalities in the future will be present. The next one is separation. So separation is a process by which the child evolves a satisfying identity as an individual distinct from its parents. So this is the time wherein the child realizes that, hey, I'm now an individual. I have a capacity to do things on my own. So that is the phenomenon wherein the child realizes that he or she is not attached and part of the personality of their guardian or parent. So separation also creates a sense of achievement for the caregiver. So in here, 8 to 9 months, infant can recognize a stable caregiver. So in this time, this is a sense of achievement for the caregiver, because now the child realizes to do things on their own, and because of that, the 8 to 9 months actually gives the child the recognition that he or she is not part of the caregiver. So now let's talk about separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is actually an anxiety that is if there is no trust developed in the child. So again, separation anxiety, when there is a development of trust, there is emotional attachment. So if there is no development of trust, there would be worry and fear. So mistrust will occur, and continuous worry and fear will also occur. That's why there would be a separation anxiety. Okay, so we have now attention and social referencing. So let's go first to social referencing. So this is social referencing. So social referencing is the infants look to their caregivers for signals showing how to deal with new experiences. So the child learns norms from the environment by looking at the cues from the caregiver. So in simple terms, social referencing is when the child actually look at their caregivers and look how their caregivers actually will take on to new experiences. So for example, if they are angry, so what are the behaviors of that parent, and the child will also copy that. So that's why it's important that to do what you actually teach. So because of that phenomenon, so we have that social referencing phenomenon that is going on with the children, and the attention there is also captivated. The attention of the child is being seen. I mean, the attention of the child is evident, and now the attention and everything that what does her or his caregiver do actually affects the behavior of that child in the future. So if that child sees that her parents are fighting all the time, so there will be a huge possibility that that child will also gain aggression in the future. Well, let's hope not that happen, but that's actually what attention and social referencing is all about. This is the last slide for this presentation. So we have the term joint attention. So joint attention refers to the capacity to coordinate attention with others regarding objects and events. It is critical to early social, cognitive, and language development. So let's go first to what attention is all about. So I've also mentioned this a while ago. What the attention is actually present in the child, and this child now focusing on the social referencing and how it goes, how the behavior develops later on. But let's go to attention. Again, attention, it is the ability of the child or of the infant to focus. So like for example, in this one, we're reading a book. The caregiver draws the attention of the infant by pointing at one object in the book, accompanied by a description or discussion of the pointed objects. So just like that, that's a simple illustration of how attention goes. So if the child actually starts to pointing out things, so it means that the child's attention is on that object. So in joint attention, in here it is called joint attention because everything about the social, the cognitive, and language development is now joined together, and it gives you a holistic attention. And it also, because of that, it will actually influence the behavior of the child. Okay. Alright, so for example, a child with autism does not take into consideration at what the caregiver is pointing at. So that's why attention, like what I've mentioned a while ago, everything in joint attention, I mean, let's go back again. Attention, it is the ability to focus, but with joint attention, everything social, cognitive, and language development is now together, and they are focusing on one thing. Alright, so that's everything for part 1. So there will be another part for infancy. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please let me know at the comment section down below, or you can just send me a message. So thank you, and see you then. Bye for now.